Welcome to Modern Goddess. Here we discuss everything mastering your mindset, wellness wisdom, upgrading your relationships so that you can unleash your divine goddess essence and live your authentic best self every single day. I'm your host, Cassie Aurora. So welcome back to the podcast, and are you in for a treat today? So you're going to love today's conversation. I only wish it had gone on even longer, but we had an incredible guest on. He was a psychologist, an astrologer, and a dream expert. So Dr Michael Lennox. It's been an incredible podcast. So we'll get more into it. But for now, I want to thank those of you that have booked on and enrolled for my Heal Your Inner Child group coaching program. Enrollment's open only for another 10 days, but I have offered all of the first few spots that get booked up a $100 discount. There are only 3 of those left, so if you want to be on that Heal Your Inner Child group coaching program, then make sure you jump on it. I do not want you to miss out. So super excited about that. It's going to be for anyone who has money blocks, self-worth issues, they have trauma, if you feel like you can't connect in relationships, if you feel anxious, depressed, if you feel shame about your body, about your self-esteem, if you have blocks with your purpose, you feel like you're just living a life that's a bit of a lie, then this course is going to dive into those deep places, penetrate so deep that you are able to really move beyond those limitations. And that's ultimately why I do the work I do. And essentially this group coaching program is for a group of women that, aren't in the position to have one-to-one coaching, but they still want the powerful benefits of some of the things that I do. And the work I do is incredibly transformational. It does work. It penetrates very deep. This is not a quick fix, but it will give you all the tools. There is nothing out there that's a quick fix, and anything that says it is, I would steer clear from. But yeah, it's a great time for you to do this work because, as you hear in this podcast, after 2020, you're going to be locked in. This is the time to awaken and clear the shadow, because if you haven't done it now, it's going to get a little bit worse. So I really encourage you to work with the energy of what's rising up for you now so that you can really make the most out of it. Now, you know that I love doing my astrology readings. So many of you tune into my energy updates. You dive deep. You may be noticing this crazy energy that's going on right now, that's going on with Saturn opposition Sun, that's making everything so intense and tiring. So really this weekend is not about starting anything new, even though it's new moon, because anything you do start is going to meet delays. So this is actually not a weekend for initiation. It's a weekend for rest, being with loved ones, being creative, softening. And if you want to know more about that, just head to my Instagram. This energy is really quite special. And if you didn't hear my latest energy update for the astrology, maybe hop into that as well. So this conversation with Dr. Michael Lennox was so fun. He is a psychologist, an astrologer, a dream expert. And he's been helping people have a deeper understanding in their unconscious mind for almost 25 years. In workshops, in the media, for private clientele, and on the internet via his website, michaellennox.com. He guides people through life's mysteries and the deep, profound wisdom delivered through humorous and extemporaneous style that has become his trademark. He is basically your ambassador to conscious embodiment. So he's one of my guys. I'm all about that stuff. His Red Robe Astrology reports, I love. They're on Instagram and they're kind of growing each month. I remember I followed him a while ago and they were much less quiet, but they're just so great. He's a media expert. He's actually been on many television shows. He's kind of a big deal, and he came on my podcast, so I am so happy that I could bring him to you. He's been on the radio. He's been on NBC things talking about power of dreams and the impact of astrology, and he's done hundreds of them. He got his master's and doctorate in psychology from the Chicago School. He has 3 books: Dream Sight, a dictionary and guide for interpreting any dream; Llewellyn's Complete Dream Dictionary; and The Little Book of Dreams. So he's a kind of the best guy for dreams, and he leads workshop retreats all over the US, and he's also got a private practice in Southern California. So guys, he's your guy, and you must give him a follow on Facebook. You must give him a follow on Instagram and reach out to him, because you know he's an incredible guy with a powerful energy. And I actually guessed his sun, and I think it was his sun and his rising, so I was very pleased with myself for that. So I'm going to leave all his social media contacts in the show notes, and I really do hope you enjoy this episode. And like I say, if you want to be part of my Heal Your Inner Child group coaching program, then please do not hesitate to directly message me or head to my website and you can sign up there. There are only a few spots left with $100 off, and I want you to get one of those. So if you want to be in that course, I can't wait to see you there. It starts in August. There's 10 days left to enroll. And without further ado, let's welcome Michael to the podcast. On the delete. Yes, we're live.
See, we are recording. In fact.
So thanks for coming on, Michael. Flipping it.
So much a pleasure. Yes, yes.
I'm sweating now. I had to take my top off. So much to talk about. So, do you want to? I'm buzzing you're here. I've been waiting for this day for a few weeks.
Oh, I'm so excited. That's so
yeah. So, do you want to share with my listeners a bit about you, what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dr. Michael Lennox. I sort of refer to myself as your ambassador to conscious embodiment. I help people with their experience of being human. It started with dreams and dream interpretation. That was the first sort of gift that arose when I was a teenager. But I also found that I had intuitive sort of curiosities, and I began reading tarot cards. And somewhere in my early 20s, I had a astrology reading, and I was like, wow, I think I understand this. Like, I got it. Some fundamental thing in what I was seeing on the chart made sense to me. And so I just sort of tripped along my life doing spiritual work on the side. Like, I would do workshops and teach people about dream interpretation. And then I would go to my job at, Metro Goldwyn Mayer and sell movies on video, right? And then in my late 30s, I was like, I don't know what I want to do next, but I've got to get out of the entertainment business and into helping people more significantly. And that's when I decided to go to grad school. And I just get a master's and doctorate in psychology and just we'll see what happens. And then life just sort of happened, and it led me into a sort of the business of being a teacher and a helper and a person who used what I know to help you have a more conscious embodiment. And astrology sort of rose up in the last decade as a big sort of way I put that out into the world. I objected at first. When astrology first started knocking on my door, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to be public about that. Like, I was reading people for a living, but I didn't know I wanted to be public about it because I was Dr. Michael Lennox. I wanted to be more scientific, but it was in my heart and in my soul. And so over the last, say, decade is when it's really just sort of come together in this, I know who I am, I know how I serve and teach. And so that leads me to today, where I share astrology with the world on a regular basis, in fun ways on social media. And then I do readings and teach classes and do whatever my heart and soul, rises up and says, let's teach this next. And this is where you're meeting me.
Yeah, you're in flow for sure. I mean, this is the thing, I think you can't, when you're really in service, I'm saying that quotation marks,
you kind of can't, sometimes it can't come through the thought form. It has to come from like the organs, and it's like this thing, you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and it makes no logical sense. So
That's
you were
right.
saying about astrology, like it found you. I was the same. I was like, I get this, but wait,
Right. Yeah.
I can't tell people I'm an astrologer. Like they'll laugh at me, but it is
Right.
a
Right.
science, you
Well,
know?
and it is certainly for me. And I remember part of my hesitation was that like I had a television show in early 2003, like on the Sci-Fi Network as a dream expert, right? And there was a lot of
Mm,
emphasis put on credibility, credibility, credibility. They were worried that I looked too young to be thought of as credible, and I didn't have my doctorate yet. And so it was emblazoned into my psyche that if I wasn't credible, then I wasn't worthy of being in the public and teaching. So there was this phone call I got in 2003 where there was this astrological phenomenon. The harmonic concordance was happening later that year. It's just a gathering in the sky of a particular
mm.
kind of a shape at a moment of an eclipse that was considered by astrologers to be powerful. And this very sort of big-ish radio station in Los Angeles called me up, and I was like, "Ooh, KPFK wants me to come on and talk about dreams." And the woman producer got on the horn with me and said, "Yeah, we want you to talk about the harmonic concordance." And I was like, "Oh, I have to get back to you on that." And for 24 hours, I had this like crisis of thought of like, am I ready to stand in a public display of what might be considered fringe by a lot of people? But I did it, and here we are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I've had a lot of people like poo-poo astrology, like in my time. But then if you're like, oh, give me your date of birth and your time, and then you just give them like an off-the-cuff reading, like
That's
your
right.
mum and your dad, they're like this. What's this issue? And they're like, you know,
How'd you
you know,
see that? Or how about this? My favorite is like, May was really important in your love life and something really, and they're like, yeah, May.
I've had shitloads of people this week because literally today I put a status. If you're really tired, like way more tired than usual, this is why. And everyone's like, oh my
Oh
God,
my God, I'm so
so
tired. I don't
tired.
know why yet.
I'm like, well, it's Saturn opposition Sun. Wait till the weekend. Don't start anything new this new moon.
One of the things I am half scientist. Like I have conducted research as a doctoral candidate, and I appreciate how science works and the idea of really what would be an empirical proof. And to have empirical proof, you have to have a large sample size, and you have to have tested something out enough to have data that says, yes, this is significant. Well, I'm an empirical study. I have held space for people thousands of times with their astrological chart. So I have had thousands of those experiences of what happened in May? What was up with your mom and dad? Who did you meet in on Tuesday? And people going, oh my God.
Yeah,
And that's an empirical study for me. I know that astrology is true and has veracity because I've seen it proven
yeah.
thousands and thousands of times. I like to say you can't make this shit up.
Well, you can't. It's
You
like
can't. And that's, yeah, you really can't.
it honestly, it's crazy. And like, I don't know about you, but something really interesting this week, which we've known about, maybe I don't know, for like a few years, this new astrological sign. Like everyone's a flipping heck. I'm like, oh, so I spent my whole week just like, guys, believe it or not, you weren't a Virgo in sidereal, which still works. Your progressed sun moved like
That's right. It's something else.
30.
That's right.
You got your
And
north.
also in Western astrology, we have a system that is relative to itself and not the
Yeah.
constellations. We reset at the vernal equinox, 0 degrees of Aries as the Alpha Omega beginning. And yeah, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, that was in actual alignment, the beginning of Aries as a constellation. I think that people don't understand that the constellations don't have the meaning that they think they do. The stars in the sky are just stories that were told by, mythological storytellers. Taurus is a white bull who helps out Zeus, and Zeus sort of, rewards him and puts him up in the sky. And there are these stars that represent that story. but the stars aren't, Taurus. The 30 degrees of space,
Yeah.
30 degrees away from Aries has the second side. That
Yeah.
30 degrees is like a crystal that has 12 even sides. Right. And that's what I think people don't understand, that you and I understand. And so this question will come up every once in a while. I have written my response as a template email.
Oh my God.
That's how often I am asked this question.
I actually say the same things at the beginning of reading, more or less, like every time. And then always, like, I've actually started using your example, because you had an example. So when we were talking about archetypes, everyone can understand archetypes. It's like, and you know, we don't need to go too deep into that, but everyone can. Like if I say the wild woman, everyone really feels that, quite visceral. But anyway, like I'm saying, as an astrologer, we're interpreting that through us, and then we're giving it to you through our lens of consciousness. Like that's why so many astrologers bring different things to the table. And you and everyone talking about 2020, well, you said astrology is accurate but not specific. And I was like, that is golden, because you said in this podcast, we all said as astrologers, unprecedented chaos like never seen before. And we all said it, but
we all said it. We all said it. I said it with some of you in conversation in late 90. We were all saying it. Like never seen, unprecedented chaos. Yes, yes, yes. We all. But tell me something, Cassie. When it started to arrive, like, how was it for you to reconcile just how crazy it was? I had fun with it. I like to say that my pal Monique and I, Monique Ruffin, who's a colleague, and we would just get on the phone and cackle as the virus was spinning. But I'd love to hear how you sort of got through that moment where somewhere between January and March, where it was like, oh, it's going to be that big.
Well, I saw it building, and then I was thinking, when Mars hits that Capricorn eclipse point, when it hits that point and it pulls the gun, that will be it. And I remember at the time when Mercury retrograde was happening, the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and it went all the way back to Aquarius. I remember reading a podcast and being like, you know, breaking it down. Mercury, Gemini, it's the lungs, blah, 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 but also like all the archetypes were the same because it was distortion of the truth.
Yes.
It was Pisces, you cannot contain it. It's like you can't contain a disease. I was like, this is crazy. But then it's like, is it true? Is it not? What? And then you've got these Pluto Jupiters that are just dropping in 3 times a year, and you're like, you think it's bad now? It's not going to get any worse. But it's not, you know, just hold horses.
I love that you're bringing up the Jupiter piece, because I had to sort of like, and I loved actually the way this morphed in my perspective. It was like, okay, Jupiter is thought of as only benefic and only bringing good things, but that's really not accurate. He brings expansion. So it doesn't matter what it is and what we would call good or bad, Jupiter just expands it. And of course, this comes to judgment, consciousness. It's like viruses are only bad because we declare they're bad.
Yeah.
Jupiter doesn't think the virus is bad. The virus doesn't think that it's bad. We do. Jupiter just says more of it. And since I invented global travel and global connection, I'm going to bring it everywhere. So suddenly the idea of Jupiter as the planet of like good fortune has to be reinterpreted more as the archetype of expansion. For me, helps teach the idea of removing the judgment of this is good or this is bad. It is not either. It is just a thing that we must all grapple with, and that's uncomfortable, but bad it is not.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, you're so right. You're so right, because I always said that Jupiter, he expands. That's all he does. Like,
it's all he does.
And this is the thing, when people are looking at astrology charts, there's all these like, oh, Saturn and oh, Mars. It's like, it's not, everything is evolutionary. Like everything. You could look at my chart and be like, Jesus Christ. But, you know, people look at charts and they're like squares, they're awful. But no, like squares are good. I'm like, this is where you get shit done.
That's right. And where you become skilled, something that's a square
Yeah.
that leads to a conflict when you're young
Yeah.
becomes your superpower as you grow in age and wisdom because you practice the stepping stone that the
Yeah.
square presents to you.
It's so true. It's so true. So
Mhm.
anyway, talking about astrology, so what do you think about this extra sign? Just can you like put it to rest right here and now?
Oh
Because
yeah, sure. It first of all, it's not even in the ecliptic, right? It's not even in the singular sort of band that we call the center of the bubble that we live in. Um, I first and foremost, the idea that there is even this sign to reckon with is a function of social media, not astrology.
yep,
It's a function of somebody somewhere started writing about this sign that would not even be in consideration outside of India at the East, and then it just got picked up, and suddenly it becomes like this idea, this meme that gets communicated out there. So when someone sees that on their Facebook post, what they're thinking is, "Oh my God, this must be bona fide astrology."
yeah,
But it's not. It's just a reflection of social media's capacity to take something that's attention grabbing and spread it out there.
literally. This is
But
what
yeah.
I said. I literally said to people, think about the past pandemic and all the inflation. Now I want
Mm.
you to think about how much the media know about anything else you've read. If you're an expert in soup making, when they talk about soup, you probably get angry. It's the same with astrologers. Like, just, and I even say this on a post, and people are still underneath it going, "Wait, so now I'm a Virgo." I'm like, "Oh, like you're
Well,
missing
that
the
leads
point."
me to something else too, Cassie, that I grapple with as an astrologer and the sun sign consciousness that's
Oh,
out there that's very common because everybody knows their sun sign. Everybody
yeah.
knows what sign they were born under, air
Mhm.
quotes. But that's not astrology either. That's a function of newspapers. In the
Yeah.
50s of last century, every newspaper started doing these horoscopes, not because they wanted to spread astrology, but they thought, oh, that'll attract readers. Because in the 30s, some British astrologer did something about Princess, what's her name, and it was accurate. And
Mm.
so the newspapers said, what can we do with astrology on a regular basis? And someone said, oh, I know, we can write like a horoscope. But
Mm.
so 50 years later, 60 years later, everybody thinks that horoscopes are astrology.
I can't. I can't. It's
I can't.
painful. Because this is the thing, like when people, like I don't do off the cuff readings ever, because it's like it discredits, like when we
Yeah,
sit there, I've got to, I have my own methods, and if a client asks me something very specific, I'm going to look at very specific things
that's right.
that I need my software for, and it's like then they'll come, it discredits it, it's like me saying, could you just tell me what's wrong with me? I've got these symptoms,
That's right.
and you're not going to do any lab tests. You're just gonna be like, yeah. You'd be like, I don't trust that person. But this is the image it gets, and then it gets put in quackery, and that's sad, you
Well,
know.
it's like incompatibility astrology focus on sun sign. Like I
Oh
wouldn't ever
God.
talk about sun sign when I'm looking at two people's charts because how they communicate
Yeah,
will be showing up with their Mercury, their intimacy, love language is all about Venus placement. Mars would
yeah.
describe their sex life. The moon would describe everything that's happening in the unspoken spaces between two people, which is way
Mhm.
more than their sun sign compatibility.
Yeah, that is so true. And like, even then, when I'm looking at relationships, I don't know about you, but sometimes I look at a composite chart, I'm thinking, wow, this is rough. But when I look at synastry, I'm like, but this is growth, like, and this could be amazing. And if someone looks at that and they're like, oh, it's only squares, and they might YouTube it and say, oh, we've got this, and they say that's really bad, and I'm like, just book him.
That's right. It's not bad. It might describe the way energy is going to feel, but boy, you shouldn't stay away from somebody because of their sun sign, and you certainly shouldn't move towards them because of their sun sign.
Especially when
Um,
people are like looked at their chart before they've gone on a date. I'm like, no, no, no. Brilliant. I love it. So I want to swing because I want to talk about dreams because that is
Okay.
your.
My first love.
Do you know it was my first love? But you obviously you
Yeah,
are.
but don't you think that makes sense, Cassie? As we're children,
Yeah.
dreaming is the one place where no matter what, we have access to our divine nature,
Mm,
right? When we're awake in waking life as children, we're only going to have exposure to those experiences if they're in our environment. I certainly didn't have that in my house. My mom was a scientist through and through. There was no God. There was no belief or a supposition of anything energetic or esoteric. So
mm,
you go to sleep and you have this dream life and it's like, oh my God, that's rich.
yeah.
It was the first place that I got in touch with, and it sounds like you too as well, got in touch with your greater self.
Yeah, so true. And the thing is, like, I've been asking a few of my, my followers and my podcast listeners, what questions and kind of things do they have? And
Let's do it.
I know you, of course, you always strike up that, it was getting to that conversation. I mean, I've always dreamed strong. I have Pluto in the 12th
Oh
and
my God,
and
that would be,
Pisces moon, and
oh
then
yeah, that's dreaming
yes,
heaven.
the dream person. But something that obviously people are going to ask about, which I think is worth knowing, is recurring dreams.
Yeah.
So an example is I always have dreams, and they will change depending on how much I've worked on myself. I had this dream for maybe 10 years that I'm in an aeroplane and it crashes, or I don't see it crash, or I miss a plane. And that's the archetype. And it's the same. Sometimes there's someone there with me, but it's all about the plane. And I don't feel scared, but it's just like, oh, the plane's going to crash. And recently, the plane has been landing for the first time in my life after years and years and years. And the other one is tidal waves and tsunamis. And now I dream about being on boats and how I'm building a boat. It's all peaceful. I built a boat the other day which was made of rubber, but then I got a better boat that was a canal boat. So we're getting there, right? But do you want to
Wow.
explain more?
This is beautiful. So yes, we do evolve and our dreams will show us that. And recurring dreams like this that show up for like periods of time, they are reflecting your development, right? And so um uh, 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 the idea that you get on a plane in one location and when you get off you're in a completely different location makes a plane trip a beautiful symbol for change and transformation through life,
Mm,
right? Big change and transformation, not small change and transformation. And so the notion that after sort of 10 years of your psychic development, I don't even mean psychic like psychic gift, but
yeah.
your psyche growing, it's like, yeah, you're no longer in the transition of the transition. You're in the new territory. You've landed in the new territory of your higher consciousness. If the
Mm,
dream is saying, okay, that work is no longer what you're working on, you've arrived. And the tsunami dream is really just about how you be with your emotional body.
wow.
And when it's overwhelming to you,
Yeah.
you the dream says, oh, we're drowning in all of the emotional experiences. You know, one of the things that I have found about emotions and embodiment is that when we are not as aware, our emotional risings up feel like they're connected to circumstance and storyline and relationships. And that's why we get overwhelmed because we're
Mm.
having two experiences. The body is just flowing up with the emotions that are right for the moment. But then the mind says, this is your fault. That's a tsunami.
Yes.
That's tsunami consciousness. That's you're still fighting with your own body's desire to be able to flow and respond with the rhythmic pulses
Mm.
that I think astrology describes well, that often show up as the body's need to express emotion. My experience is like I don't have any more storylines that trigger those things. I'm not having those kinds of relationships, so my circumstances can't trouble me emotionally, and yet I still have these waves of emotionality. So
Mhm.
what did I learn from that? I learned that the body needs to be in those emotional expressive moments free of story. I think then the stories that we create are just so that we let our bodies feel the emotions that are going to be there anyway. So
Mm.
your tsunami dream is while you were still fighting with that mechanism and occasionally expressing that it was too much, that it overwhelmed you. In fact, I think the dream of the tsunami is what allows you to wake up the next day clean and clear and ready to battle with your emotions again. What I love about the boat image is that in standard dream interpretation symbolic meaning, because the body of water represents our emotional and our unconscious content, the boat then becomes the I can maneuver, I can move forward, but I got to move slow. I can't move fast. Boats move slowly, concomitant with the appropriateness of water travel, which interpretation of is we move slow enough to not grab the emotion and fight with it again, but to allow it to. So what's rubber? The rubber boat as being the first one is like, this will float. No matter what, this rubber boat will float because rubber floats. Like, it's watertight. I love that as a first boat image because it's like, no matter what, your psyche is saying, I got you.
It was a bit rubbish. There was a bit of a leak, and I thought, oh, I think.
Right, because it wasn't complete. You weren't done.
Yeah.
Right? So it's evolved, you said, right? We're out of the rubber dinghy.
Yeah, I got a canal
What's
boat.
your boat looking like these days?
Canal boat secondhand in the same dream. It was like, I was like, oh, you've picked a silly boat here. You don't need that boat. Trust that you can get a better boat than this. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a boat.
And it was a canal boat.
I ended up then getting into a canal boat, but the one I was in was like, it was almost like I don't know what it was. I remember thinking, well, this isn't going to get me very far. So I was like, right. So then I went and got in this little funky canal boat, and I was like, this is.
What I love about the canal boat is canal boats are both about traversing the emotionality of our humanity, but their canals are usually a function of urban dwelling. So that's high level of thought, lots of effectiveness. The dream of urban living would be your most active self, but navigating all of the tiny little emotional, parts of navigating your life at a high level. So I think that canal boat has some real effectiveness representation. It's representing the idea that you are able to get anywhere in the complex thoughts that you have, urban living, and the emotionality that allows you to navigate those tight spaces. It's a nice, sophisticated image.
I'm happy with that. No, it's interesting though, because, I always looked at dreams and I was like, well, it makes, I've always felt like the symbols make a lot of sense when you just think about, well, what does that represent? So I'm curious, someone else asked, and I think this is interesting. And I was like, I know exactly who to ask this question to. It's actually the guy I live with. He's downstairs, and he normally has all of his dreams are really intense. Like, he has a lot of trauma he hasn't worked through, to be fair. But they're really intense, like war and danger. But he has these dreams where he's like dreaming he's in the dream, and then he wakes up. But then he wakes up, like he keeps waking up. So he kind of has like a dream within a dream, within a dream, within a dream. And I'm like, dude, normally you can have a dream within a dream, but he's like continuously waking up in the dream. I was like, that's intense. But people have that.
People do. And we refer, the word woke is key these days. I mean, everybody, it's like a shorthand for understanding rising up to a higher level of conscious awareness is being woke or waking up or spiritually awake, right? So and what do we do in the morning? We are in our sleep state. We are disconnected from our conscious awareness. It is like being dead. And then what happens when we first wake up? This miracle of our brain firing into activity for the day. There's nothing short of a miracle in that act of waking up. And when we wake up, we get to meet the day with a conscious awareness that's alive. So the symbol then of waking up is waking up.
I love that.
You gave us the key piece to this when you sort of on the slide said, I feel like he's got some trauma that he hasn't quite woken up to.
Mm.
So the dream state is showing the layers that he is working out. So I get what you mean by when you declare that from across the room, what you see. But the fact is, as a human being, he is in his process of waking up,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And the
Sure.
dreamscape is either helping him be in the conflict consciousness so that he can wake up less conflicted on a Tuesday, and that every once in a while he'll have this other dream, right? That sort of shows him that indeed there's purpose to this. There is waking up. He's getting into, so with each waking up, it's like another level of conscious awareness being expressed in the dream state.
I love that. Literally, you are like the dream expert. So, I mean, people like, I think, I mean, what are the benefits of people really looking at their dreams? Because it's something I get all my clients to do. I'm like, okay, start noticing. And you said something really important on one podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but get into the habit of writing down the dream. And even if you don't remember it, still write, I didn't remember
Right,
the
something.
dream.
Yeah. It's let's start with that. The idea that the window between waking, sleeping and waking, and when that conscious awareness comes online, the area of the brain where we are perceiving dream imagery is different than the area of the brain that we process visual imagery, right? Eye brain and dream visual brain, different parts of the brain. And so when that eye brain thing wakes up, it's like, boom, I know who I am, I know where I am, and then I know when I am. It just eclipses that dream quiet memory. So when people are wanting to remember their dreams with more accuracy, I encourage them to put the pad by their bedside and write. Even if they don't remember something, it's important to do that writing. I don't really remember anything from last night. And then you wait a moment to see if anything arrives. This signals the unconscious that you have the desire to keep that window open longer. And this is the only way I know of to increase the possibility of dream memory sort of sticking around. But the why of it, to me, the why of it is that our conscious awareness that we know to be ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that narrating mind, is not who we really are. It's inserted into our psyche. The astrological corollary of it is Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is our I am presence, but it's Mercury, the planet of words, mind, and communication, that we know ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The sun just burns, and Mercury tells us that we're burning. So that mind is akin to you and I going, well, I'm Michael, I'm Cassie, it's Tuesday, it's 12 o'clock, it's time for lunch. That mind, when that's asleep, then we're really who we are in that 5-dimensional, larger than our small consciousness, connected to everything else, part of humanity that is mysterious, spectacular, and enormous. And that, in some ways, is the more true of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So just having a relationship with that is everything about the spiritual practice. What's a spiritual practice but just us waking up to our oneness with God? Whether we do that by going to mass at church and eating a little body of Christ and drinking some blood as devout Christians, that's just my oneness with God being expressed as my relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the same thing is happening in the experience of my oneness with my larger self. I know in my dream state, and I wake up and the conscious mind snaps into place. And now I don't know my oneness with God. I know my oneness with Michael.
Mm.
By having a relationship to what happened in my dream state, it's like having a relationship with my higher self and my shadow and the hidden things and where I'm working on my consciousness. Just having a relationship with it. I interpret a dream and people go, oh my God, that's amazing. That's what the dream meant. And it looks like the only way to work with dreams is what I do, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Because that's not dream work. It might be a session with Dr. Michael Lennox, but it's not dream work. Like you don't in your apartment or your home, in your journal with your, in your bed, you don't need to do what I do. It's about just cultivating the relationship with the dream. And then shit starts to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I love that explanation because it gives people value. People think that I mean, I know some people that have so like dreams so intense that they wake up and they're like, I need another nap. And
Yeah, yeah, we're doing a lot
I'm
of
like,
work.
there is no rest sometimes, but no,
There's no rest.
it's important. Like, and I think honestly, so fascinating. So I'm curious. I want to swing a little bit because I've talked about this, but I'm curious. By the way, do you have Sagittarius and Leo in your chart?
Honey, I'm a Leo sun and a Sagittarius rising.
I was like, God, he's got to have Sagittarius and Leo.
That's hysterical, honey. I am Leo sun, 30th degree, which
Oh,
in astrology has some mastery associated
yeah.
with it. Like all Leo. Thank God I have a Libra moon, so I can, you can, I'm. If I was just all that Leo without the Libra moon, I'd be insufferable.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
Libra moon keeps me very other oriented. The Leo is all me. Like if
Yeah.
I'm in the room, there's nobody more important in the room. But Libra moon says if I'm in the room, you're more important than I am.
Yeah.
Right. So those two things combine and mix up well. And then the Sagittarius rising is what you're experiencing of my energy. So I'm very impressed with that. Hoping
I'm
those
quite good. I find it fun. My partner has Venus in Leo.
me
Um,
too.
yeah, he has Venus in there, but he's Libra Sun, Taurus Moon. Thank God, because I'm.
Oh my God, that's yummy. All of that.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, the Taurus moon helps also mitigate the challenges that might be happening with that air and fire.
I mean, like his Navamsha chart. He's got Scorpio ascendant, like loads of Scorpio, but in
Mm,
mine I have Taurus Moon. And
okay.
I'm now Scorpio ascendant. I have a massive fat Capricorn stellium. But then I have Mars in Taurus, which is directly on his moon. So it's fun, but ultimately, it's the relationship is growth, but like real depth. It never gets further apart. But Libras, somehow, I've had to learn Libra energy big time. Like that's been my challenge.
Got
But I've
it.
got none. So anyway, we've gone off tangent. I'm curious what you think will happen over these 6 months with this Mars retrograde.
You know, one of the things that I've been saying a lot out there about Mars's retrograde, about the third big gathering in November with Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn coming back into proximity is that I'm learning as we go. Like I've never been, and if people would say, "Well, what's going to happen with the virus?" I'd be like, "How would I know?" But I'll tell you what I'm thinking every
Yeah.
step of the way, right?
Mm,
So similarly, Mars retrogrades are harder to pin down in a teaching manner in this way.
mm,
Personal planet retrogrades are wildly important. They're felt by every individual on the planet hugely significantly at the same level and amount. That's why they're so ubiquitously potentially challenging.
mm,
Mercury retrogrades are just about how you think and how you communicate is going to go into a process. That's very easy to explain and understand.
mm,
Venus retrograde's the same. It's just how you give and receive love and how you receive intelligence from your emotional body will be going into a process so that you can be better at that. Mars is about our embodiment and therefore our choices and
mm,
therefore our goals and our actions. That's not singularly tangible for all human beings because everyone has a different need of what embodiment and choices and goals and actions are. So
mm,
the idea that Mars is going to go retrograde does not allow any astrologer at any given moment to say, this is what you're going to be working on outside of abstract terms like
mm,
you're going to be working on your embodiment. You're going to be working on the choices you make. You're going to be working on how you hold goals up and what becomes important. What's most interesting to me about Mars and his retrograde in Aries is that Chiron is in Aries as well. So our
yeah.
wounding, healing dude is in the sign that Mars rules. So in Aries, Chiron is helping us heal the wounds of rage, anger, reactivity,
Mm,
and the propensity to go to war as a first solution, which is what
mm,
Mars in Aries wants. So Mars in Aries going retrograde, for those of us that are on a conscious path, I think has to be about how we each deal with the difference between aggression and assertiveness,
Mm,
reactivity to responsiveness,
mm,
all of the ways in which warrior-like energy is misused by us will have the opportunity for us to drop into the unconscious, which is what a retrograde motion implies. That backward motion of a planet is like dipping into the unconscious. And the best use of this, I think, is going to be for those who want to look at, where are my anger impulses coming from? What can be healed and dropped about having to react to feel like I've got to protect myself? If we're in Chiron wound stuff around Mars and Aries consciousness, then it has to be about, how does my wounded self spark me to be angry and reactive? And can I go into inner territories and work this out a little bit so that I can emerge at the end of Mars's retrograde more responsive and less reactive, more able to be with polarization without all that rage. I think that for those who are unconscious on the planet, it's just going to be a dip into rage and anger. And
yeah,
I worry a little bit about what we're seeing. Certainly in the United States, we're seeing left, right, and center, all of these opportunities for violence to erupt everywhere out of conflict in the streets. And I do think we're going to see way, way more of that in the United States throughout the year. I do think that because November does have such a big rising up of Pluto, Jupiter, and Capricorn right when we're holding our elections in the United States. You can't make this up. And that Mars is retrograding in September, October, November as we're leading up to that election cycle. I absolutely can sit here and say, yeah, you ain't seen nothing yet.
yeah,
We just haven't seen nothing yet compared to what's possible in the eruptions of violent response to the world's calamitous transformation.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's
I
really,
don't have any problem with this. Like, I personally am like, yep, this is it. This is what we're doing. Put on your hat, wear your mask, and fasten your seatbelt.
this is literally like everything I
This
was
is
saying.
what we're here to do. We're changing and transforming.
I
We
mean,
need, if you're ready to help energetically, dive on board. Come on, follow Cassie, follow me. We'll help. Come this way. The
yeah,
water's fine. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but the work is mighty. It's important. And what I really, really believe at the end of the day is that as each individual on the planet is led to the place where they're in less war with themselves, then
yeah,
more peace out there is possible. And this is a year where that's transformation is happening for 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 people of consciousness.
yeah. I totally agree. And it's like, I feel like it's the closing chapter. Like, it's going to be like the big, like when you're giving birth, the good stuff's going to become. The whole thing's been a bit difficult, but like it's push zone. It's push
Yeah, I
zone.
think you're right. We're in push. It's so funny. I was on a hike this morning with one of my best friends, and she was telling me about her childbirth experience, apropos of something else, because that was 20 something years ago. Yeah, I think we're in push land, and
Yeah, it will be the big push.
yeah, we're in
A
the
lot of
big push.
blood, a lot of
We're
screaming.
birthing something.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've said to people over and over again, like, if you've got demons in the closet, Pluto, Jupiter's going to expand them. Just deal with it now,
Deal
because
with it.
you
Do
deal
the
with
work.
it, it reflects.
Do the work.
It's so interesting about the elections. I honestly think they have astrologers at the top. They are not stupid. But that's another thing. I'm curious, do you follow human design at all?
It's very interesting. I do not in any significant way, but I've been exposed to it
Mm,
enough to be really curious and interested mostly about the process of how the people who created it took
yeah,
the algorithmic, somehow they algorithmed
yeah.
astrological data to turn it into a new system. And
Mm,
it's so interesting that you're bringing this up because I have a Zoom date with somebody who was part of that process
wow, that's
tomorrow.
amazing.
And I reached out, I got hooked up to her with a client who knows this woman said, "Oh, I'm going to introduce you to," and I wrote her an email, which is really funny for me to do because I would rather eat glass than have an astrologer reach out to me and saying, "We should talk because I'm an astrologer and you're an astrologer." It's
Oh,
like that's like when somebody knows I'm gay and they wanted, like this happened to me when I was like in my 30s, it was like, I'd meet people in business world and find out I was gay and they knew one gay person and they'd be like, "I'm going to fix you up." I'm like, yeah, just, yeah. Anyway, so similar like astrology, it's like, I don't want to talk to you just because you're an astrologer, right? But I had to write that email to her and say, "Oh, please, 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 will you talk to me?" Because I want to know about that process of turning astrological data into this new system that seems to be grabbing people's attention
yeah.
in a very big way. And so I have very little experience of it, but I like it, though it will not be something that will ever grab my attention.
Yeah.
Because I'm just too old and set in my way. I don't mean like that's a bad thing. I just mean like I know who I am and I know what I love and I know what I teach and I'm an expert at it. I'm like, 15 years ago I would have taken it on, but I don't think it existed 15 years ago. Are you versed in it at all?
Yeah, I'm really getting into it. Primarily because like it really helped me with the energy systems because I'm a projector. So I'm not here to work. I'm literally here to like guide. I have such limited energy. And I was like, why can everyone else just work really hard? And I felt guilty and lazy, but this is the thing with projectors. We're not here to work. We're here to guide. And we have really penetrating, like focused energy, but for short amounts of time. And then the rest is about sleeping and resting. But of course, the
So the
world,
context gave you a great
yeah,
comfort with qualities of how you be in the world that you might otherwise judge.
yes, and also my strategy in business, because my strategy is to wait for the invitation. So how I talk to clients, the minute I've changed how I approach clients, 100% like they come to me and my business is just unfold.
Isn't that interesting? Because most coaching coaches
Yeah.
would probably tell you to force that engagement.
Yeah, and that's actually only one human design type that should be informing in that way. And they're only 8% of the population. So
That's
then you've
funny.
got these coaches who've made it massive because they've got that manifestor energy and they're like
You
informing.
can do it the way I did it.
Yeah, and it doesn't work because
Yeah.
people like me repel people and people reject us like, oh, go away, creepy frog. Like, no. So for me, I was like, oh, I'm not lazy and actually I need to complete. So it's like, and as well how you manifest. So that it has the manifestation styles. And so, some manifestation says be specific and others says, no, be open. Well, actually in human design, it tells you what to do. So I have to be specific. And so now I get exactly what I want. If I want 10 clients, I'll get 10 clients, but I have to be specific.
You have
So
to be
that it's
specific.
good. It's good for that. And even food types, it tells you digestive types, which is really interesting. So what food suits you?
Really? I may need to
Yeah.
check that out more. I don't remember enough to be able to speak intelligently about this, but I too had a similar reflection when someone sort of took me through my human design chart and described the idea of that the way I produce similar to the waiting to be asked kind of thing, that my output is always responsive to the
Yeah.
horizon. And so for years, I was like, I'd bang my head up against the wall trying to push new ideas, new curriculums, new courses out, and it would never happen. But the moment it's ready to arrive, bam, the door opens, it pours out, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And it was actually in the last 2 years of working with some marketing people to expand my business that I got to watch this in action in such a way that was like, oh, right. This is what I was fighting against, because
Yeah.
we could talk about stuff and they would make a suggestion that was right. And I would respond to the suggestion. And 3 days later, a big project, they were like, well, you ought to think about doing it this way. And then 3 days later, it'd be like, here it is.
Yeah.
Because the response to the horizon is something that is part of how I operate. And astrology did not offer me that clearly, but human design did.
Yeah. And
And
this
yet
is
human
what,
design is using astrological data to make those assessments. That's why I want to talk to this
yeah,
woman, because it's birth date oriented. So it has to be
yeah.
taking planetary movement into, or planetary placement into personality description.
It definitely does, because you change types. Like, you know how we have progressions in astrology? Like you
Oh,
change
so you change
type.
types. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the
But even that, if we change types, like astrology has progressions, then the human design people had to have used progression mathematics to create their changing types.
yeah, they use astrology, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, and the I Ching.
Oh, Jesus, I can't wait to have this conversation with this woman tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Because you
I'll
can't do. It's like doing astrology without knowing tarot, or you know, we need to really blend it all if we want to
Yeah,
be.
I think so too. I agree that I was a better astrologer because I had spent decades doing dream interpretation and working with the
Mm,
tarot. So my orientation to archetypal consciousness was well in place before I ever started studying astrology 25 years ago.
yeah, same. I did loads of like study on Jungian psychology and things like that, and went through my own integrative therapy journey before astrology, because the depth of understanding you're able to offer is
Yeah.
much more profound, you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I know you have to shoot off. A very busy person, no, a full diary, I like to say. So do you want to share with people what you offer? And I know they're gonna love you and want to
Yeah.
connect with you.
Oh, thank you, Cassie. Absolutely. So, best place to reach me is my website is michaellennox.com. I'm on Instagram every day at Dr. Lennox Dreams, DrLennox Dreams, and I do my Red Robe Astrology Report. It's 59 seconds of a daily download of the
I love it.
astrology of the day, and it's exploding on Instagram over the last 2 years. So it's been really fun. I do teach. I'm announced a class just the other day that I'm starting on August 1st, 4 weeks of finding your voice. I figured I've got both the sort of, as a psychologist, I can help people with the psyche of having a stronger voice and better boundaries and more declarations of who they are. But I'm also a trained stage actor and a singer and an expert in breath and breath stuff. So I know how to train voices too. And I thought, what if we took people through a process of investigating their relationship to their voice in a psychological way, while also teaching them how to open up their resonance and their breath
Yeah,
capacity to a more powerful voice in a physical way, and do that at the same time. So that starts on August 1st. And you can find out
amazing.
all about that on Facebook. Also on Facebook at Dr. Michael Lennox. I know there's 3 different monikers. I wish it weren't, but you can certainly go to
Oh,
michaellennox.com and click into all of those other places if that's all you want to remember is the Lennox.
yeah. I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh,
That's
thank
crazy.
you.
We have so much in common.
Yeah.
I am trained in acting and vocals. I did my degree in musical theatre.
Perfect. You know, I thought I wanted to be an actor. And when I look back at my deep and frightening and awful 4 years at SUNY Purchase doing the conservatory training, that was the start of my instruments training.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't about ultimately going on stage, though that's what I thought it was going to be. But
Yeah.
everything I learned about breath and the voice and the body and
Mm,
freedom and expression is part of my daily spiritual practice now.
yeah. 100%. And we'll sign off with that, because I think, well, I get it. You know, I left acting because ultimately my whole life was a performance. And I realized the only space I was real was when I was acting. And actually, outside of that, I had no fucking idea who I was.
Oh, that's
So I let it
fascinating.
all go, because now I don't have the energy to sustain being inauthentic. I use it as an expression, but not on stage. I don't want to be congratulated for that.
That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I sometimes like to say that the bringing something in through my voice as a performer is
Mm,
not that different than bringing something through my voice as a teacher. Only as a teacher, I'm serving the planet, and I'm in
yeah.
like mastery because I'm lit up by that act. in a way
Yeah.
that performing just like, I was always going to be Salieri, never Mozart, right? But as a teacher, I consider myself a Mozart.
I love that. And with that, we'll sign off. So thank you so much for coming on, Michael. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you for having me. Great pleasure.
Thank you.